How is it going?
How is it going indeed? That is a good question.
Well,
Oh,
how is it going?
we're kind of coordinated-ish. We're both wearing white.
Both wearing white,
White human beings.
white on this quite
White.
white day.
It's not a white day. It's a beautiful sun. Blah, 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 blah. I'm back with what was that episode we did? The last episode we did, and I'm like, what is this inside of me? It's like a devil that needs to come out with bizarre jibber jabber. I don't know.
What should we call
I don't
them?
know. I feel like there needs to be a name now.
I think there
We'll wait
needs to
on
be a
that.
name for them.
I
We
know.
should
I
actually
think
we should put, I'm trying to get this centered. This what's going on. We should call
hold
we
a
should like
contest.
yes, exactly. Do a poll on our Instagram stories and be like, name Rachel's blah 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 blah.
Jibber jabber. Yeah. Anyway.
Rachel Jib Jab.
Jib jab. Welcome to Getting Juicy. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Hero and I'm caffeinating.
Yes, you are in the midst of caffeinating, my
Yes.
dear. I can see that. And speaking of caffeination, is that a word?
Caffeinating, maybe?
Caffeination.
Speaking of caffeinating, we can start it.
The caffeination. The
Ah.
caffeination. We always forget to plug this on our podcast.
Oh, right.
About buymeacoffee.com.
Mm-hmm.
So support us however. Hey, you know what? If supporting us just means you're following us on Instagram, love it. Amazing. If you wish to support us a little further, just to continue doing what we're doing, we are on buymeacoffee.com. So it's buymeacoffee.com/getting juicy.
That's us.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There goes. Yeah. Caffeination. Yeah. So that's what you could do, folks. Thank you in advance. And then since I got that out of the way, before we get too carried away talking about nothing but something,
yes.
Who is our guest today, Hero?
We are talking with the one and only the Ruby Starlight. Trademark, apparently on her Instagram has a trademark. So I'm curious to see if that's a registered trademark. And if it is, then even more amazing. Ruby Starlight is a Paris-born in, I think, Strasbourg. Is that how you say it? Strasbourg. And then has been living in Vancouver for the last little while. I actually have never talked to Ruby in person, but I have seen her perform her drag at multiple events in the city this summer. And I have to tell you, she is such an incredible legend, in my opinion, that is worthy of anything and more that she might want to create for herself. She is an incredible person of color and has a fantastic presence on Instagram and also within the Vancouver and I would assume French drag community. I haven't personally done much research on Ruby because I would love to hear from Ruby's mouth herself about how everything is in her life and how she came to where she is today. So that's a little brief synopsis, but I think we're in for a really lovely treat.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how honest you are about having not done, well, you did live research. You saw Ruby.
I've seen Ruby perform.
You've seen her perform and, that is, I'm sure encompasses a lot of who she is. We will definitely learn more. What I'm trying to get working right now, and the reason I'm a bit distracted is because Ruby Starlight has, sorry, I just got distracted by some of her Instagram stuff, but she has a doll.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I was clicking on her link tree and trying to find the merchandise and see what this doll looks like because it sounds so intriguing, but I can't seem to find it. So we'll have to ask her about.
I have seen some partnerships with certain like limited run like swag companies that make dolls. I know that Jimbo has a doll out, a couple of them actually. Little Baloney Ghost and the Talent one from having the Casper.
So cool. Yeah.
It's very cool. It was a way for, again, drag merchandise and really bringing a brand. It's very much like if you're any kind of artist or performance and you are your own image and brand. Great. That is super, super awesome. So fun little aside, I saw Ruby performing actually Ruby followed me on Instagram. I didn't know Ruby. And then when I saw Ruby and I looked at her Instagram and saw her performance dates and I saw that she was performing at the Vancouver Mural Fest festival in August that just passed. My mother's an artist in residence at the new City Center Motel and they've turned their suites into artist studios and Ruby was performing on the couple of days they had a drag brunch offering there. And so it's so funny. I was saying to Ruby earlier today, it's so interesting to say that like I've seen you perform and we've chatted on Instagram quite a bit, but yet I have no idea what you sound like.
Uh,
I don't know
right,
what your
because it's
voice sounds
always
like. It's
lip
all
sync.
lip
Yeah, lip
syncing.
synced. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really funny.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I know we've had some drag folks on the show, but I think one reason why, I mean, honestly, I could interview drag personas for the rest of our podcast and be
I know you
completely
can.
content. But it's also because that was not a finger two. I was scratching myself. I
I
was like, oops,
you know,
subliminal.
that's so funny. I just said, I know you do. And for those of you that are just listening, Hero just put his middle finger up to scratch his cheek using his middle finger. I don't know. I don't know who does that.
Well, I don't know,
I'm getting off tangent, but
when I was
I don't, yeah.
but when I was a teenager, though, not knowing, when I wanted to get someone's attention, like when you tell someone to come here, like, hey, like come closer.
Yeah.
Subconsciously,
no.
subconsciously, I would do like come here. And so all my lesbian friends in the youth group educated me and said, Hero, do you realize what this is a gesture for? And I'm thinking,
okay, now for those of you that are listening only, do you want to, we'll
now I'm describing what it would be if I was to say for someone to come here, like come closer, or you're trying to tell someone to come closer to you.
Yeah.
And I'm holding my right index and middle finger up, and I'm gesturing them like towards my knuckle, towards my fist.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the whole like the two in the pink and one in the sink or any of those types of things. So as a teenager, I'm just like, what? I'm trying to get your attention. Like, your index and middle finger are like your peace fingers. So I'm like, come here.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but again, my lesbian folks.
Then you also don't want to do this.
Oh
if
yeah,
you're in
no
the
kidding.
UK. But anyway.
So much is saying to me, like, Hero, you can't do that. You know what that means? So like, use your whole hand. I'm like, not like this, so right? Not like a fist. No, like just be just be human. Be human. Just use your hand.
Oh, I love it. So ever since then, have you stopped doing it? I mean, that was a long time ago, but
well, yeah, I think I have.
I've never noticed you do that.
But there are also some other questionable body language or gestures that I would do in public, not realizing that they might be considered awkward or maybe not politically correct. Like I used to, like when I needed like to take a breath, I'd always like kind of like massage my chest and be like, or something like that, or just like, oh. And then people would look at me and they would say, like, Hero, you realize that you're basically fondling yourself in public, right? You're in a line at a coffee shop. Like, I don't know if you want to be doing that. People might think you're doing something different.
That's one thing, but it's your facial expression. That's one thing, right? But when you look like your eyes are rolling into the back of your head because you're just so, so stoked to be taking this enormously gorgeous, juicy, beautiful breath.
Sure, then we can call it that.
Right. I think it's the look on your face. It's not necessarily the gesture, because like I've seen those men that might kind of like kind of put their hand on their chest or just kind of like touch their pecs a bit. Yeah. Kind of like, I don't know what they're doing, massaging, whatever it is, but it's just it depends. It's
well, and
the look on your face.
But as we talk about mental health and like self-awareness and stuff, as I'd love to say, so Rachel, speaking of mental health, how's your head?
How's my head? That's a great question, Hero. Obviously my head's a little foggy with me not being able to speak English.
A little bit clamped.
No, I always tend to be like this at the very end of my day because I'm literally, it's funny because I actually create and edit ad copy. So you would think in advertising that I'd have to be very, I can't even speak right now. That I'd have to be really on point. I have to be really articulate. I have to be very much like, I have to know how to speak English well. But at the end of my day, I just get completely brain dead, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So where's my head? I feel good. I just feel a bit airy. I always get that way at the end. We're usually recording these podcasts at the end of both Hero and my days of our paid gigs, our work schedules, and we kind of fly right into the podcast recording. So not too much downtime in between. Maybe we need to do that so that I'm not so like talking gibberish.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you'd have to record later though, but if you want to do that.
I'm teasing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing pretty good, honestly. Yeah, my headspace is pretty good. I think what we spoke about in our first episode back after a few months away, which is our last sip episode that Hero and I do together without a guest. We were talking about, you know, tips and tricks, how we can, tools, I guess you could say, of how to keep our heads in the game as we head into darker months, cooler months, especially if those of you that listen to us live in Canada, where, you know, we tend to definitely have a lack of vitamin D as soon as we head into those fall, winter months. So at that time, and that was a couple weeks ago, I was nervous and anxious, and I'm like, oh God, like it's coming. I'm so scared. I don't want fall and winter to come. But I've actually accepted it, and I've started to, like we were talking about, get into a routine now before the weather really changes, of the things that you want to do and create good habits of doing and routines of things that will help you or will help me fall winter. But I'm going to start them now, not when it's too late where I'm like, oh shit, I should have started that. But now, you know, I'm too this, too that, too tired, too depressed, to whatever it is when the months change. So, so I played pickleball, only once, but I know we talked about that in the episode too, only once, but I did that. But the weather's been so gorgeous that I have been in the lake. I went for a swim today and for a paddle, which is crazy at the end of September, which is great.
I saw that on your Instagram. What a beautiful photo. What a beautiful view.
Yeah. I went for a hike yesterday, and then, I went down by the water. Today I went for a paddle, like quickly during my break, and went for a swim. So yeah. I'm doing all right. Ask me when the weather does change, but I'm doing okay. Thank you. Yeah. And how are you? How's your head?
Distracted by crows. They're
crows.
They're roosting, I guess, moving all the way.
Where's your head at? Where's my head at? That's that song. Remember that song?
I do remember that song. Yes, I am old enough to remember. I am old enough to remember. Yeah, how am I doing? I am pretty tired, but not in a stressed out way. Just learning, taking in lots of new information with my new job. So that's been really lovely. And I'm definitely feeling my groove, feeling my element, which is fantastic. What else can I say? I am really grateful that our weather, but we've actually had a pretty nice consistent extension of summer, even if the days are shortening and the weather is cooling in the morning and the evening. But then feel like, you know what, we might be able to get to October 1st, knocking on my glass desk here, you know, before we can actually say, all right, summer is done, officially for now.
Done. Yeah,
because sometimes, you know, late September, early October can be quite lovely, and then November is really nice with fall, and then for me it's really like, or I guess October, let's say October. And then again, I always remind myself, I think I said this on the podcast, even on our other episode you were referencing, but like November, December, I feel are kind of the most dreary months of the year for me personally, because they are the shorter days of the year. There's usually higher contents of rain, like ongoing rain. And then at the same time, you know, a lot of people are more unwell, or cold flu season comes back, or family relations come up where you don't normally think about them unless if it's like a holiday gathering or a time of the year. And then I find for myself, it's like, great. Well, I know that when we get to November, it feels like a slag on. I just realized slag is a UK reference. That's actually quite bad, but I'm just going to say it slags on. And then when we get to
drags
December,
on.
Sure, it drags on. And then in December, and then in December, you know, we know that on the 21st, that's when the days get longer. So then so that's how I kind of get myself through it. I kind of pace myself thinking, okay, if I'm here, here's what to look forward to. If I'm there, once I'm there, know that the new year's around the corner. And a new year doesn't always necessarily mean resolving or anything. It just, I think of what worked from last year and what can I do to keep doing those things that work.
Yeah.
Changing perspective.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And you're really good about you know, when the calendar year that we all go by here changes to that new year, you're good about setting goals and things like that. I've known you to kind of like to really, you know, be pretty into that. Whereas I don't like the pressure. I find that there's pressure around that. And I don't like to be pressured to be like, okay, well, this next year has to be this or has to be that, or, you know, I would rather just set my goals today or tomorrow Or, you know, we don't need, I feel like a lot of people do kind of set that in stone a little too much. Like, well, that's the time to do it. No, you can do it anytime. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's just me not wanting to conform.
No,
that's my like my rebellious spirit too. But
I can go sometimes like once a month and reassess my priorities and my goals and revisit them every season, every quarter. You
Absolutely.
know, and you can break them down, which is what's so great, is because even if it's a daily goal, you can say, hey, what do I want to do every week? I want to go and move my body for an hour once a week, and one day a week every week. And then it feels less daunting than saying, I'm going to do this every day for this length of time at this same place in the same corner of my home. Instead, you can be like, cool, I don't have to really think about it, but I know that, oh, wait, I haven't gone for a walk this week. Cool, I have half an hour. Let's go for a walk. That's your one thing a week. So it's all about framework, but the idea, the anticipation of it is definitely daunting when you're not used to the patterning. So that's totally understandable. Like it can be a lot if you don't have a framework of how to structure it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello.
Oh, can't hear you yet.
Ooh, what's going on with the audio?
Connecting. Here we go.
Here we go.
Connecting.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Yes, now we can hear you. Love the bangs.
Read lips. We're lip readers now, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, how perfect is that in terms of a lip syncing artist? And then we're supposed to lip read the entire podcast.
Right? Very bad.
It's very
it's on point.
It's very accessible for all of our non-listening folks and listeners. They're just gonna know everything you're saying.
Right?
Annotate the shit out of the recording.
That would actually be kind of funny. You could do a whole episode of just, well, it couldn't be obviously downloaded or uploaded to podcast platforms. That would be ridiculous. Of a silent podcast, but just everybody, you just have to fill in the blanks.
Concept.
It could be a new concept.
It could be a totally new concept. Oh my gosh. So we're so happy to have you. And it's exciting because I know this is just going to fly by. We have so much to chat and just debrief and connect about. So we would just love for you to introduce yourself. There's no right, wrong formula, just however you would introduce yourself to your best friends or family.
So I'm Ruby Starlight. What else can I say about myself? I've been doing drag for almost 2 years now. Originally from Paris, France, and now reside in Vancouver, California. Oh no, what the fuck? In Vancouver, BC. Sorry.
You know, I love that. You know what I think, Ruby? You are manifesting right now. Because you're going to be the shit in California. That's what you want.
I am, because I actually literally am planning on moving to LA for a couple weeks in November. So I think I was just thinking about that.
Now, moving for a couple weeks or actually like, no, bitch, I'm moving to the US.
No, just for a couple weeks, just kind of do a couple shows, see some friends, and then come back here.
Okay, nice. Awesome. Because I mean, Vancouver, we love you in Vancouver, so we definitely would love for you to stay here.
Same, to be honest.
Well, we're Hollywood North though, still, right? So that's what they call us, or so you know, that's the thing.
And I mean, it's not really that far with a plane, you know, so it's like I can easily come back and forth.
I know it's so close that I'm sure even Google Maps would say it should only take you about 10 days to walk.
Exactly.
Right. And in heels? Yeah.
Maybe halfway heel and then I'll change it to a flat.
You gotta get one of those convertible heels that you can just flip inside so that way it becomes a flat and then you can flip it outside when you need to perform.
That definitely would be a moment. That would
I think they call that a chameleon.
Does that exist?
Yep. They were not popular, but they're called chameleon heels and they were a thing sometime in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yes.
Crazy. Okay. Yes. Well, first let's talk about your gorgeous bangs. Like talk about banging. Like and I just saw the color on the side of your hair.
Yes, gotta stick with the branding.
I love it. This is a very random first question because it just happened to me today. How do you get around, or do you even get leg razor burn?
I don't, because I don't really shave.
Okay.
I either wear tights or I use
maybe too much information, but I'm like, I just got the worst freaking razor burn on my leg today.
I like the creams, like the shaving creams where you don't actually have to use a razor. That I kind of vibe with, but because my skin is sensitive, I have to mix in a lot of like Vaseline in it afterwards, just because it kind of like hydrates your skin, and it
100%.
It leaves me without any burns, which is definitely something that I kind of like try to stay away from, but I prefer just wearing tights, honestly.
Yeah, fair.
I love that. I feel like we're on like a DragCon panel right now. We're like, and everybody, Vaseline. That glow,
Truly,
yes. No the ring light before the ring light was a thing.
Yeah, oh my God. So
you go on.
I was gonna say, you just call it, I just thought you were gonna say Rue. You just called her Rue. There you go. There's more like foreshadowing, perhaps.
Did I call her Rue?
You said Rue. No, you went Rue, like you're gonna say Ruby, but then I was thinking RuPaul, and then
that was so unconscious. I didn't think about that at all. No.
It's because they interrupted
you. The show. I would love to host.
Oh my God, you'd be a fantastic host. You have to give Canada some life. No offense.
Yeah. I'd love to. Maybe next year. We'll see.
You never know. So, I mean, love the chit chat, love the hot goss. Really curious to know a little bit about just what brought you to Vancouver, what you have been doing in Vancouver so far, and kind of just walking Rachel and I a little bit through that.
So basically, I feel like most of the things I've been doing here is performing. I've been a part of the By Felicia cast since February. So it's basically a show that happens typically at the Biltmore Cabaret, and it's me, Alma, who is the host, and then a rotating cast of drag entertainers, and we just do shows, entertain people. We have some also during the summer. We had a lot of family events, so outdoor events, the Vancouver Mural Festival, for example. And for the moment, I'm mostly focusing on the performing aspect of my career. In France, I was focusing more on the, I'd say, behind the scenes aspect. So kind of like starting my clothing brand, because I have merch that's out in collaboration with Drag Queen Merch. Then I also started a website and just kind of like setting up how I want my character to interact with people in a social media realm, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And now just kind of using that, I guess, and going off of what I've been able to build through social media and kind of like performing, connecting with people, and just having now that in-person experience, especially that now that COVID is finally over, we are able to have that. So really just enjoying that part of the moment.
I have so many questions, but the first thing I guess thing I just thought of is you pretty much started in COVID, because you said 2 years, right? So you basically, it's like you decided to do something that is very much connecting with people in an audience, but during a time when like nobody was able to connect with an audience in person. So how was this a dream of yours for so long? And then it was just like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I just need to start. It doesn't matter, you know, when the timing doesn't necessarily have to be like perfect, but it's
not really. Actually, I think drag was never really a dream. It was more something that kind of happened. It was kind of a situation where I realized that I had pre-existing knowledge in like doing hair, doing makeup, and it was kind of me combining all of those parts of my life and building it up into one character. But it wasn't something where I consciously thought, oh, I really want this to be what my career is going to be. And I feel like at the time it was especially kind of more playing around and discovering myself, my own femininity, and where I want to fit as a person in that, whether I want to be like expressing myself in a very masculine way or in a very feminine way. And I feel like drag was kind of an outlet and a vessel to be able to have both sides of my personality and the binary that is kind of every single human being, but be represented in more of a drastic way. So have the masculine side and then the really feminine side, and be able to I'd say be able to capitalize on that in the sense of obviously it's my career, but also it just being an outlet to having fun and being able to express myself. I think that was definitely the main focus when I started drag.
I love that. It's actually really interesting because I feel like we've asked that question to a few different drag entertainers, and that's actually more of a common answer that we get. It's kind of like, you know, what you just said. It's not like it was a dream of theirs or of yours. It just was this outlet or avenue to express yourself, and it just kind of happened in that sense. So it's just fascinating to me to hear that, because it's yeah, I don't know, Hero, like if that's something that you recall from our past guests, but I definitely.
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of common threads. I think what's the main point is about self-expression and liberation. Like if you really want to distill it, it comes down to just honoring what is within inside of you and feeling like you want to channel it throughout a medium that happens to be drag. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's now some people are born, especially in this day and age, that like see a drag performer, they know I want to be a performing artist and perhaps even a drag artist. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is always like that, right? So it kind of stumbles upon and also it's like, I know I can do this equally well, or perhaps bring something different that I'm not seeing everywhere else. And then you kind of fill a niche. And so that's what you're getting at, is that I can do this my way. And I know this needs to be represented. And so I'm going to do it for the time that I want to do it, which seems kind of on track for what's going on now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I feel like you said, going into the idea of representation, it's definitely something that now for me has evolved. I feel like when I started, it was just trying to have fun and expressing myself through art. But now I feel like, especially being able to grow my platform on different social media and now really being known in the community internationally, I feel like it's kind of a responsibility that I've put on myself to be that representation for young Black queer kids around the world, representation that I didn't necessarily see growing up, that I then was able to relate to watching the show and seeing entertainers such as Coco Montrese, Shea Coulee, and other people whom I feel like have relevant stories to my own experience. But I definitely feel like that's something that happened later down the road when I low-key started to understand the influence and the impact that me being myself and just being visually and explicitly queer can bring to other people.
You make a really good point in terms of people that are archetypes that you can see might be not the same as you, but that you realize there are people that might be similar or have certain qualities. And you mentioned two just right now. I'm curious to know whether if it's in those two or additional folks that have inspired you, what have been some of those traits, behaviors, or even lifestyles or walks of life that you know about those people that either are directly correlated to your life or that have inspired you to also do that more? I would kind of want to dive more into that. Be curious to know more.
I think, I think it's more so about the visual representation for me, just because when I think about whether it be Coco or Shea, their stories don't touch me in a way of, oh, I went through that as well. But it's more so just the representation of being a Black queer entertainer and being able to simply inspire by being yourself, you know? Like if you take the other people in the city, there aren't a lot of Black and especially dark-skinned entertainers. So having that representation on stage and even just online of seeing someone who looks like you, do good, be successful, and have the opportunities that you might look up to, I feel like that's something that basically lets you know, oh, okay, so this is something that I would be able to do. This is something that is possible for me. And I feel like even here in Vancouver, I've had a lot of Black people come up to me and tell me how much they appreciate my representation, because in the scene, again, it's very, very white. Whether it be indigenous or not, it's still white passing, quote unquote. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily utilize their First Nation culture through their drag. There are a couple entertainers who do, but I could literally count them on one hand. So I feel like having that representation and visual representation of, oh, this is another dark-skinned Black person is really important. But I also do feel like if we're talking about representation as it relates to a culture, I personally don't, like, my drag isn't very explicitly Black or African. Like, I don't really wear a lot of braids. I don't really wear a lot of traditional African outfits, which is a choice, but not necessarily a conscious choice. But I still feel like me being myself and being out there and letting other people know that it's okay to be yourself and to do what you want to do, whatever your background might be, is powerful enough. I would also like to look more into my culture and kind of like showcase that. But I think that I'm not there yet for multiple reasons, but I'll get there.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I love that. Is so it's becoming more and more increasingly evident how important that is, to see the representation in you know, very like industries. And I know I'm going to call drag an industry, but it's an industry as well. That it's so important to see that. I mean, maybe I'm just opening up a can of worms, but I also feel like it's so important for children growing up to see representation of like, hey, okay, that person does look like me. They are me. They're not just another white person. So for example, like Ariel, the Little Mermaid, right? Like, and I'm like, that's amazing. Like, yes, because, you know, growing up, these, you know, gorgeous, you know, people of color that are growing up, they're not going to look at like the original, any of the Disney princesses. I mean, Disney, okay, that's a whole other freaking topic of conversation, but relevant. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to look and be like, okay, well, she doesn't really look like me though. So can I be that when I grow up? Like, you know, so I'm just, you know, good on you for doing what you're doing. So I just want to thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and with that being said, like I said, I know I'm kind of opening up a can of worms, but I feel like this is where the top of the conversation is going. But what are your feelings on even that whole Ariel, the Little Mermaid ordeal? I mean, let's open it.
Because I have a lot of feelings. I think it's important. I think it's great. I just think that the reaction people are having is kind of sad.
It is very sad.
I feel like a lot of people who low-key won't even watch the film are reacting in a negative way just because of a character being changed. And I can understand how it would affect your childhood memory to have such an iconic character be changed. But I still feel like it's not relevant because ultimately the original movie is still there. So you can still go back to that and watch her being white. But I also feel like it's really important to let other people in. Let other people feel like, hey, you know what? You matter. You are a part of the Disney universe, and you can be represented as well, because they did do the Princess and the Frog, but that was like years after everybody else. And it just didn't feel as impactful, if that makes sense. So I feel like now having a movie that is so iconic and that actually is an original Walter Disney, have that be changed is going to, I really think it's going to inspire a lot of people, and I think that it's going to give a lot of Black kids, boy, girl, non-binary, whatever, that visual representation of I am a part of this. You know, I matter and I can be a princess living in the ocean, blah, blah, blah. Like just that whole fantasy, you know, being able to actually identify to it directly.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for answering that. I know it's not like the easiest conversation, but it's an important one. And no, I do appreciate that. Sorry, Hero, go ahead.
No. I mean, what I was wondering though, and I think it's not more really of a question, it's more of an observation. But I guess the way that I think of it is that in terms of reacting to diversity, inclusion, whether if it's racially related, gender and sexuality related, I just want to, and I haven't read up about that new rendition of the movie, so maybe they've addressed certain things. But again, I think there's a fine line between replacing the visual appearance of an actor or of the character with keeping the same storyline, but at the same time, like introducing introducing actually written stories that are made from a perspective, and also therefore the people that are playing those characters or roles are from the perspective that it was written from. So I think there's a little bit of a fine line, because yes, I think it's kind of like, yes, that's part of it. It's showing the representation visually to a mass audience that normally may have not seen that, particularly folks who maybe don't know the story before, have not seen the previous story, because that's what happens. It's usually like 20 years or something before they remake something and then update it. But then also, what about the stories and the characters and films that are actually from the vantage point? Not just, okay, we're going to do this, use new cast, new characters, and we're going to change the way that they visually appear. You know what I mean? Like, it's about finding that fine line. And I don't know if that has been addressed.
Do you mean like if they've changed the script and all that kind of stuff too, to align it with, I don't know.
Like, it's like if
I'm
you're
not sure.
taking,
Yeah,
if you're taking
storyline or
like it's like if you're taking the same script and story, so to speak, of like what was 25 years ago with a white character, like designed as a white character, and you put someone in that is non-white, you keep the same storyline. I'm not saying that that should be changed or different, but what I am saying, it's kind of like you're adapting to society to be, you know, more culturally correct or appropriate, I guess, or inclusive. But is the story the exact same context?
You mean you're hoping that they've adapted the story to be more
maybe that's what I'm trying to say, but it's just an observation. It's not really like I think they should or that they shouldn't, but I just find that there's a difference between like taking, I don't know, taking something that is already there and switching one part of it perhaps and make it on the surface look more diverse and inclusive, as opposed to really focusing on the actual development of that character and make sure it relates to maybe their background or what their whole character development is like.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. You know, when it's
like,
what's like if you take away like Little Mermaid, I'm just going to use something very generic. It's like if you have like a pineapple and an apple, I don't know, something like that, and you say it's the same story, but instead of a pineapple, we're going to make sure the pineapple is blue inside, but it's the same story. Like, why? What's the intent behind that? What's the purpose behind that? Does it change the impact, or does it change the development of the pineapple, or no? It's a very abstract metaphor, but
you're like, you're losing me a little bit, but
all I'm saying is,
but
like,
I think
is it a matter of reaction, or is it a matter of actual intentional change to make a point and to help change the way that we see things?
Which is what you're hoping, right? I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're hoping it's the latter, that it's something that will change. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's more what I'm saying. We're not doing, it's not happening just because like, oh, we should be doing this because it's appropriate now and we're going to get in trouble if we don't. We're doing this because we actually want to make sure it's happening and it's affecting and making change, and it's actually kind of destigmatizing or re-educating our humanity to be more inclusive and to support and to actually advocate for those that might not have the same representation as before.
Yeah.
But I don't really know if the story is always relevant to that, if I'm being honest, because ultimately the story itself really doesn't have anything to do with being white or black.
No, it doesn't. I
don't feel like changing the color of the character will make the story feel more black or more white. I just feel like it's honestly visual representation, period. You know,
that's a good point. Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, it's a mystical story of someone's imagination that can really be, you know, anybody. It should be anybody, but anyway.
Let's
go on another topic. That
whole dialogue is actually very profound, though. Like on all sides, just to point that out.
No, but I do appreciate that. I want to go back in time slightly to talking about how did you find yourself in Vancouver from Paris? Because that's a huge freaking jump. And I love Paris. It's been many years since I've been there, but love it. Were you born there?
No. So I was born in Ivory Coast.
Nice.
And then moved to Paris because my father was from Paris. My mother was from Vancouver, BC native.
Wow.
So it's kind of that situation where
really
I was able to travel between France and Canada because of my parents having both nationalities. And I kind of now decided, after doing the quote unquote drag free in France, that I kind of wanted to come here and have different experiences doing drag, meet new people, a new community, all those things. So it was kind of just coming over and discovering what it would be like to be here, but doing drag. I've kind of like always been here, whether it be for holidays, visiting family, things like that, but it's now just a different perspective of working and being a part of the scene rather than just visiting.
And what is the difference between the scenes in, I mean, there's probably massive difference between the scene in Paris and Vancouver for drag, I'm guessing.
I feel like here the scene is more, I feel like here the scene is more open, quote unquote. It depends to who, but there's more opportunities as far as like performance, as far as being able to have, like even the idea of doing a spotlight, so coming on stage and just being there for the tips is not something that we have in France. In France, it's either you're booked or you're not booked. So it's definitely a situation of, in France, we have, I'd say, bigger productions, and it's giving more of a theater type show, like people are staying down and it's like a 1 or 2 hour moment. But I feel like here it's more of a, I don't know, more of a club environment, if that makes sense. And I think that that's for me the biggest change between both scenes. I think that's really the biggest change. The fact that here it feels more open to everybody being able to have that opportunity to showcase themselves. And I feel like in France, it's more quote unquote elite, if that makes sense. Like you really need to have that booking or you're not going to go on stage, you know?
And it sounds like maybe in Vancouver, you're able to be more connected to your audience because because everyone does feel a little bit more laid back and free and those kinds of things. I'm not sure, but
I'd say because even as far as like interacting with people here, it's very much so like you do your show and then when it's intermission or whatever, everybody's hanging out and outside in the same places. While in France, I feel like it's more of a, like just a production, quote unquote, and like an actual stage show where like when intermission is happening, the entertainers are still backstage and you actually don't really see them. Like we might be outside, but it'll be on the other side of the building, you know? So it's really a different thing.
Absolutely. And what's the vibe between performers? Is there like more cattiness in one place than the other? Is there more competition? You know, like
I feel like it really depends on you. It depends on your personality.
Like,
I know
I'm not looking for gossip. It was more just like I feel like just with what you're saying that perhaps it's more of a competitive environment maybe in France than it would be in Vancouver, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I would say yes and no. I would say yes and no because in France it's kind of like you have the top queens and then you have everybody else. So it's like, is there any competition when you're not even on my level kind of energy?
So there's a real hierarchy.
Very that.
Okay.
In France, it's more unfair, but I wouldn't say that it's like competition. It's like if you're in, you're in. If you're not, too bad for you. But here, I feel like here there's more competition just because everybody's kind of at the same level of having those same opportunities and being in the same venues. So here it's kind of like fighting for an actual booking. So it's like you really need to put yourself out there. You really need to have the good friendships. Very that. So I would personally feel like it's more competitive here, probably also because I'm new and I'm not like as established as I am in France. So I feel like in France I have less to do to get booked, whilst here it's kind of like, oh, so you're still new, you still have to be friendly with people, blah 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 type energy.
And speaking of, sorry, I'm kind of like dominating this conversation.
No, it's fine, go for it.
But speaking of because I was watching a video on YouTube about from the Drag Bible, and they really, like, you were one of their top choices of like, be on Drag Race France. Did you see that video? Yeah, you'd probably do.
Yeah.
So when's that gonna happen?
Or whenever they decide to cast me, I guess. I was supposed to be on season 1. And then it didn't work out for narrative purposes, we shall say. So basically they found somebody else who made more sense with the cast because she had more pre-existing relationships with the other cast members, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, one day I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, that day is gonna come. I know it will. I know it will. Absolutely. It'll be there. It'll be in Canada. It'll be somewhere.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean,
it will.
Seeing Ruby perform as well, which Ruby mentioned the Mural Fest, that's how I think I encountered Ruby in person. Ruby is an incredible performer, and definitely no shade to any of the other queens that have been on the show, but just seeing Ruby in person definitely fills a niche and a void that I haven't seen in drag. And whether if it's in person or watching like drag on TV and Drag Race, like Ruby has something that others don't have. And I think it would be a shame for the media and the mass population to not pay proper witness, and even the final 3 at the very least, to someone like Ruby.
And he's not just saying this because you're on the podcast. He has said this before.
Yeah.
To me personally, not a recorded, so I mean, he has definitely raved about your performance. So
if I was the model after anybody, even though my human capacities are not there, and that's not a self-limiting belief, they just are not there, I'm not made that way, it would be Ruby as a mirror. That is for sure. So there you go. You're so always welcome.
Thank you.
XOXO, yours clearly.
Oh my gosh. Where can people find you, Ruby, for performance?
Performances.
I can't speak, obviously.
I'd say check on my Instagram at It's Ruby Starlight. I always share my content, always share performances, but I usually at the moment perform Junction 1181 or the Biltmore Cabaret for the By Felicia cast. In Vancouver, and then in France, it really depends. It really depends, because I feel like in France also we don't have a Davy Street. Like we do have Le Marais, which is considered to be the queer neighborhood, but it doesn't have that many clubs where we're actually performing. So it's kind of like an intersection between straight clubs, queer clubs, and us really moving around all of that. The biggest French event is called the Bitchy Party in Paris. And that's a big moment, but it's not always in one set club, so it kind of hops around. So yeah, in France it's a bit different. Canada, Vancouver, definitely the biggest spots. I haven't been to Toronto yet, but hopefully soon. And yeah.
So, but wait a second. So how often are you going back to France then these days?
I haven't been back since February.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's been a minute. But I was invited to do a couple performances. I was invited to join a part of the Drag Race France tour, which I didn't because it just didn't feel convenient.
Fair.
But yeah, it's definitely something that I would love to do. It's definitely something that I will go back to, and I mean, I'm sure I'll go back to France probably this year or next year, but I haven't been since February.
Yeah, fair.
Makes sense. And one thing that I think about as well, when that's so tied with France and performance artistry and like entertainment and lounges, like the Moulin Rouge. And I'm not sure if you get this, but what would be a considerable kind of idea of Moulin Rouge in France, but for drag, if there is such a thing?
Well, the Moulin Rouge does have drag artists. Not now today, or definitely it's not what is being popularized. Like it's not the selling point.
Right.
But France and drag, as it relates to the French culture, have always been tied to the cabaret scene. The biggest drag cabaret in France is Madame Arthur. And it's basically what we call a transformiste cabaret, where basically they have drag entertainers, they have non-binary people who are kind of like visually androgynous, and it kind of really showcases queer art and queer talent. On the first season of Drag Race France, we have two people who are from the cabaret of Madame Arthur. We have La Brioche, who represented the trans community, love them. And we have Soa la Muse, aka my spot, but the Black girl on season 1. And I'm really happy she was on though, because she really not only brought talent and representation, which we love, but she also introduced a lot of people to the cabaret scene, which is again a big part of French drag culture.
Right.
And which I can't relate to because that's not my experience at all. My experience has been more club scene rather than cabaret scene. But it really shows another side of drag, which is kind of like something that I feel isn't really given the time of day on Drag Race necessarily. I feel
not really.
The boom boom cat moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel like having those people was really important because it really explains kind of like the history of drag and how it's tied to French culture and how basically the cabaret scene was a way for those people who are a part of a marginalized community and who were still even today discriminated a lot in France, because France is definitely very racist, definitely very homophobic, and not as woke as we are given the credit internationally. I feel like France has a very good reputation worldwide, but it's kind of just serving baguette, croissant, and the fashion, but not really acknowledging the fact that France is still a very, very traditional country and all of the things that go with that. So having them on the show, I think was very important to trace back that history of, okay, no, so drag has been in our culture for however many years, and has been a part of inspiring even people who aren't in the queer community to really understand what we actually do, you know?
Right. Wow. See, and I didn't know any of that really. Like I didn't really know what the reaction is to even the LGBTQ plus community in France, or I didn't know any of those things. So thank you for educating me, because I really didn't know.
Yeah, and adding on to that, and I know you spoke about this a little bit in terms of like bringing certain cultural references in terms of like being Black, but in terms of French culture, French influences, what are some different influences that you may have unconsciously or intentionally infused into your artistry, if any?
I think just the idea of minimalistic fashion, quote unquote. I feel like my style is kind of very a mix between French Balmain, the brand Balmain, and drag, just because I feel like my style isn't explicitly drag, but it's not also explicitly woman. Like I feel like some people really go into that natural biological, quote unquote, woman energy. And I feel like I kind of like, best example, Jujubee. Like some people will call her pedestrian, I just call it woman. And then you have other people who are completely on the other side of the spectrum, such as I don't have a good example. Okay, Utica Queen.
Right.
You know? And I feel like I'm kind of in the middle where I take the things that inspire me from both sides and kind of mix it into my own style. How does that relate to France? I think just because France is very minimalistic in the way we express fashion. Obviously, high fashion is always camp, but in the way everyday fashion is portrayed, we're quite minimalistic. And I really feel like that has come into play with my drag and just having explicit moments, if that makes sense.
Meaningful, very meaningful. No, like it's like everything has a purpose though, and it's like you can tell and it's meaningful, and it doesn't mean that it's just because it's maybe a little simpler, it's still chic, and it's got, you definitely have placed a meaning behind it, and that can be seen. So yeah, that makes sense for sure. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, heroes, are any last kind of parting words or thoughts or questions or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the last kind of couple things I was curious to ask you about is also I love asking this to any of our few drag folks we've had on the show, but what would you recommend to people that want to get in the drag? I know
That's a
it's a
good
broad
question.
question, but for
Yeah.
you, everyone's answers are different. So
Don't, because I don't want to have to compete with you.
I don't think they can, honey. I don't think they can.
Yeah.
No, but for real, I feel like it's really low-key important to try at least once, whether it be being a drag queen or even a drag king for the other side of the spectrum. But I feel like just, or even not doing drag, but just playing around with your own feminine energy, masculine energy is really important, just as far as like learning to get to know yourself. You know, how do you feel when you're put into a situation that isn't the ordinary for you, you know? And also just as far as like realizing how people treat you, because that's a big thing. Like the other day, I was in the subway. No, I actually saw SkyTrain here, but whatever. I was in the SkyTrain.
I got it.
didn't have my ticket, and I was trying to get out. And you know how you have to to get out?
Yeah.
Okay. There were like 4 or 5 people who were working for like the SkyTrain station.
Okay.
I go up to them looking cunt. And I say, hey, I don't have my ticket. It's like I obviously paid for it to get in. I showed the receipt, blah blah blah. But they were just really, really nice about it. Really helped me. They were like, oh, no worries. Beat me out. We're really cute. One tried to flirt with me. Wasn't the moment, but whatever.
Wow.
But it's just like the same thing happened to me 2 weeks earlier, out of drag, looking like a regular black boy, quote unquote. And I had to pay for an exit ticket, even though I still had. I was able to prove that I did purchase a ticket, blah, blah, blah.
What?
But because I was in drag and you found me attractive and my energy and the way I portray myself and the way you see me is different, you helped me and you were very nice with me and you let me go out. But as a boy, you asked me to pay the $5 to get out. So I just think that it's really interesting to see being a man, being a woman, or whatever people think you are, how they will adapt their behavior to how you portray yourself and the visuals you are giving, you know?
Yeah, 100%. That's a very good example. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's a great comment. And also, I guess, I don't think that, okay, I'm just going to ask it. So I know that there are obviously bio cis women, like cis het bio women that are performing drag and so forth, and we see it. But I don't necessarily see that a lot on the other side of the gender spectrum, like whether if you're gay, cis, or trans, whatever, but like male passing or male identifying folk calling themselves drag kings as opposed to like they're a performance artist or they're a you know, they are their name, but they're just very exaggerated. Like some of our obviously great male divas that have been out there, like, you know, Bowie or Mercury or things like that. Are there people that are like, I guess, drag kings, but they're, let's say, gay men, for lack of better terms? Like, have you heard of that, or do you know of examples? Because I'm like, wait a second.
Have, but
I'm guessing it's not very common.
Yeah. It's definitely not as common, and I feel like with Drag Race, their main focus is the transformation, the idea of going from a man to a woman, and that drastic transformation of kind of like defying the patriarchy and saying, hey, I'm a man, but I can also express my feminine energy. And I feel like they don't really give that platform and recognition or even visibility to whether it be the trans community or women or people who are just enhancing their own gender by being a man and being a drag king. And I think that that's unfortunate, but there are definitely a lot who do it. I feel like Dragula, which is an alternative drag competition, has more of that representation and really show all of the spectrum of what drag is. So I feel like it's something that does exist. It just hasn't been brought to the forefront as much because of Drag Race. Honestly, I feel like we're just more famous if we're cisgender men doing drag that is a feminine type of drag because that's what the show pushes to the forefront. But if we kind of switch it over and say, oh, Dragula is the first show, like if Dragula came out before Drag Race, I feel like the drag scene would be very different today.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. No, go ahead, Hero. Sorry.
No, because I think a great way to kind of summarize that is that when we have an exposure of something that is like the first of something that gets the mainstream, let's say, that sets the tone for what follows it, especially if it sets the pace. So even if it may not be the first thing that happened to be the case, it was the first thing that caught the most people's attention and therefore solidified their foreign or unconscious mind being conscious of what they think something is, the ideology of it, I guess.
Well, and it's kind of, and this is a silly example maybe, but just imagine, for example, like your first taste of ice cream, you're like, okay, well, that tastes like ice cream. I get it. It's like vanilla ice cream. But like later down the road, like someone serves you and they're like, well, this is now ice cream. And it's something that doesn't taste anything like ice cream, but you're already in your mind. It's like, no, I know what drag is because of that. And like you said, the first exposure, whatever, and our brains just hold on to that. So just trying to flip everyone on their heads is just not an easy thing to do, right? Just to change their minds or their perception, so I guess.
It's the unlearning. And here's what I want to end on. I think this is probably a very powerful thing to end on. What do you hope to help others? What do you hope to have humanity unlearn about drag through your brand and your performance? What do you want the world to unlearn that they are pretty set on of what they think they would expect from
you? I would say that drag doesn't have to be one type of drag. I feel like it doesn't have to be always feminine. It doesn't always have to be expensive, quote unquote. It doesn't always have to be what we see on TV, which is obviously cliche, but I feel like I don't think I have a message of what I want people to unlearn. I would rather people learn to express themselves however they want, rather than actually have outside information coming in and that being what your education on drag is, and then us being in a situation where you need to, quote, unlearn anything. You know, I think it's better if people just let their own creativity come through and that be their own expression. I know that me personally, my drag is very, quote, classic, basic, feminine, whatever, but it's just because I feel like that was my own want, my own yearning to express my femininity, my own want to feel like I can be a man, I can be a woman, I can be both. Ultimately, potentially a whole discussion about transition that I'll have with myself later. But it was just definitely me acknowledging that there's an extremely feminine energy in me and wanting that to be portrayed in an artistic way, and drag felt like the most relevant moment for me. But yeah, just do what you want. Be open, be free, be creative, and have fun. Because honestly, it's all about having fun at the end of the day. And if you're not having fun, there's an issue somewhere.
What the hell's the point?
It's way too expensive for you to not be having fun.
Oh, there you go.
Well said.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, Ruby, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for your precious time. We're really glad we could make this work out, and and it's pretty cool because I know you and Hero both got to hang out last week. So
we did.
You snuck in a little chat before this chat. So anyway,
it was lovely. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ruby. Well, have an awesome evening. And are you going to perform tonight?
No, today is my day off.
Your day off. Okay.
I'm gonna take this off and put some moisturizing on.
Nice.
There you go.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it, and it's always a delight to connect with you. And thank you for all that you do for our community.
Thank you for having me. Truly appreciate it. And hopefully I will see you very soon.
You will definitely see me very soon. I'll shoot you a message.
Please do.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.